it is going to be a big start for next year's season as ESPN is officially out of the Big Ten media rights talk. This would be your college football, college basketball, things along that line. And CBS and NBC are set to join Fox. They will be the three main holders of the Big Ten's media rights. So no more ESPN after this year. If you're wanting to catch Big Ten, the CBS 2:30 game will become a Big Ten game. NBC is going to have a primetime game that they use now on Big Ten. And, of course, Big Noon Kickoff will more than likely choose a Big Ten game, living up to the name.
Yeah, I think there's – when you told me this, I think there's a few things that jumped out at me right away. One, I'm surprised ESPN's out. I mean, think about it. ESPN. It seems like they're buying everything here, left and right these days. And so that surprised me. I wonder if any of it has to do with the UCLA and USC move because of obviously with them being Pac-12 teams, Fox had a good read on them and everything. They really haven't been ESPN, so you get those moves. So I think that might have had a factor. We talked about, it seems like the last few years, a lot of the big-time Big Ten games have been on Fox Sports. So in that case, it didn't surprise me from a Fox standpoint. And I think the big thing here, NBC jumping in. You haven't really seen them. I mean, obviously they're big with the NFL, Sunday Night Football, but you didn't really see them with college football too often. Obviously, they have to deal with Notre Dame. So to me, it jumped out to me is NBC preparing maybe for Notre Dame, trying to buy out of that? So we always talk about Notre Dame being independent and trying to find a way out of that to actually join a conference. So is this them kind of preparing? And I know I'm jumping here and maybe I'm over, but that's what we're supposed to do, right? Overanalyze
Yes, that's
it.
what we do here.
That's one thing that came to my mind is, are they preparing maybe for Notre Dame to try to find a way out, join a conference, and this way NBC's prepared and they got something locked in, and they don't have to worry about losing a big-time school like Notre Dame. Because correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, obviously we talked about you watch more college football than I do overall, but is I don't really remember watching any really college football games on NBC outside Notre Dame.
That is correct. NBC's deal has been exclusively with Notre Dame, if I remember correctly, since the 90s. Definitely before I was born. They used to be a big player in it. Then they kind of stepped away. There was a time where the Orange Bowl was always on NBC or some of the major games. But it has mainly become Notre Dame dominated, which I agree with you, Andrew. I think this is probably the Big Ten trying to hedge their bets. Okay, we're on the same network as you now. You have the same agreement. Notre Dame, just come on over. We're already in your backyard anyway. But the other thing that stands out to me looking at it, ESPN believes they would have had to pay $380 million per year to keep the package, but the Big Ten takes a $30 million pay cut to go with CBS and then another $350 million deal to go with NBC. And one final thing, this deal starts next year. Next year is also the final deal of SEC on CBS. So who gets the games, the Big Ten or the SEC? Or does CBS just win and get both?
Yeah, no, I think it creates a huge different dynamic, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Again, like you said, there's a lot of different factors here. Crazy to see. I mean, you see right here in the article, Big Ten has been on ESPN, has been carried since 1982, so obviously a big loss there for ESPN, but maybe this is ESPN. Maybe they're going to fully get a deal with the SEC. Obviously, like you said, last year is CBS, so they're going to be able to package the SEC. And I mean, here's the crazy part, too, is, I mean, we talk about it throughout the summer with the realignments. We don't really know how everything's going to go. In a few years, we can find out where we're going to have a bunch of different conferences, have some major ones, so everything can be different. And you bring out a good point about Notre Dame and being in the backyard there. Maybe that is Big Ten's way of stealing Notre Dame from the ACC. It's just, okay, we already got our partnership with NBC. You can keep your NBC contract, still come to us, and you can still have all your games on there. So that's a good point, too. And because that's one of the things holding them up from fully going to the ACC is that they got the contract with ESPN. So, I mean, that's a good point there as well. So, no, this is an interesting release here today, and I think it's going to open the door for many different things. And I wonder how it affects some of the primetime games here this year. Sorry, not this year, next year in that 2023 season with the different directions. So
I know that is the fun part. We're already getting ahead of ourselves. It's almost like this season isn't even going to We're already talking about what's going to happen in 2023. But to get back to this year, the coaches poll officially coming out, I believe, yesterday actually, unless I can't remember how to use a calendar. That should be
I've
correct.
been there.
But Alabama, to the surprise of absolutely zero people except maybe a few Georgia or Ohio State fans, Alabama the number 1 team in the country as projected by the coaches. Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson 4, Notre Dame 5, Michigan, Texas A&M, Utah, Oklahoma, and Baylor rounding out the top 10. Oklahoma State starting it off at number 11 to get to the next tier, I would say. Oregon 12, NC State 13, Michigan State 14, USC 15, Pitt 16, Miami 17, Texas at 18 with a first-place vote. We'll get to that in a minute. Wake Forest 19, Wisconsin 20, and then Kentucky, Cincinnati, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Houston rounding it out. Looking at some of these other teams, Iowa just 9 points away from being ranked. Penn State right behind them. Then a big, nearly 100-point gap to Tennessee, BYU, LSU, Auburn. I will never get used to seeing LSU as Louisiana State, by the way.
No,
I know they have to write out the official school name, but it'll never make sense to me to see them as Louisiana State.
No, I like triple read it when I see that, like just to make sure. I'm like, wait, who's Louisiana State again? Oh wait, LSU.
Yeah, it's like, do they add a new team on me again? Why are they so good? But looking at the poll here, is there anything really that stands out to you, Andrew? Kind of something that doesn't seem right, or a little high, or a little low, or?
Well, before I get to what necessarily stands out to me from just the way they voted it, I think I kind of took it of the way we talked about everything last Thursday. It was, and we talked about how the Big 12 is going to be up for grabs, and I think you see that where you can basically roll the dice on who's going to be, and you got Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State. 3 Big 12 teams right there, 9 through 11. I think you can roll the dice, and I think you'd agree with me based off of what we talked about last week. And you don't really know who's going to be the best team. So I think that's what you see there. I think if staying on the Big 12, we talked about Texas could be up there with their recruit, and maybe it's just what we've seen in the past of them not living up to expectations. But I thought that was kind of surprising, them falling down to 18 when you had the OU, Baylor, OSU, 9 through 11. And I think we talked about it, what kind of year Baylor might have. So I thought Texas would be right, like maybe not in that like exact chronological order, but maybe like 13 or 14. I think in that standpoint, I thought going down to receiving votes, I thought it was funny seeing some of those teams we talked about possibly being as surprise teams. You saw some of them down there, the Penn States, the Iowa. And then I thought it was funny, Iowa State, because, I mean, we were kind of mixed on that last week. I know I viewed them a little higher than you guys did, so I thought that was neat in a way. I think that just shows the respect for Matt Campbell. I know they were lower in the receiving votes. I think it was only like 3 or 4 there. But, no, yeah, I thought that was I kind of almost looked at it. Yeah, so it's 3.
Yeah, 3.
And then
3 people agree with you, Andrew.
Right. Well, and then Kansas State right there at 4, right in front of them. We talked about them a little bit. So I thought that was kind of interesting. With that fresh off my head is kind of how we related. And I think we were kind of on a similar standpoint in that sense. I think the most surprising, I didn't value NC State that high. I honestly can't remember that one, how you guys were with them. But I thought 13 was pretty high for them. I thought they'd be, if they were ranked, be more in the 20 to 25 range in that sense. But, no. Go ahead.
Yeah, to me, NC State, I mean, I kind of made the joking prediction they're going to lose their first game and last game, and that's somehow going to mess them up. But the one that stands out to me, I guess, is this 4, 5, 6 right here of Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, and that, to me, there really is no – I mean, I see the separation of about 100 points between Clemson and Michigan, but to me, at least where we are before the season even gets going – you can't tell me that, an Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State, even a, USC if things go their way, or a Pitt or Miami, couldn't knock off one of those 3. There's absolutely a possibility, like Notre Dame has to play Ohio State week 1.
Yep.
That's 2 versus 5, so we get our top 5 matchup again. Clemson's going to have to take some major steps to improve. They have the defense. Now do they have the offense? And I think that's something funny. This is what happened last year. Clemson started out high. They got beat by Georgia. They got beat by NC State. But they slowly climb their way back up through the year, and they get rewarded with a number 4 spot at the beginning of this season.
Yeah, that's what surprised me. That's why they were my next one, too, so I'm glad you brought them up, was how high Clemson was. I get it. You bring in recruits, you bring in transfers, you lose maybe some of the players that hurt your team a little bit, obviously, and obviously that goes in the factor. But for what happened last year overall, I was surprised to see them at 4. I thought they'd be a little lower. And I feel like you get that every year with these rankings, and nothing against them. I think it's a fun storyline and everything, but you always get teams that are over valued here. And I mean, I think A&M, they obviously have a lot to prove this year. I think they're another team you see up there a lot. So that was kind of a surprising thing with Texas at 18 as well, as I feel like they're usually up there in the top 10 or so. I do wish, it has the high-low next to it on the right, and obviously that's the high-low, I think, for the season.
Yeah, for this
It'd be
season.
cool if they put the high-low on, like, where they're ranked. It's like, obviously Alabama, I think, would be 1-1 for both. But, like, a team like OU, OSU, like, where was the highest thing they were voted? Like, how many, like, who was, like, did they get voted maybe 7 or 8? And were they as low as maybe the 18 where Texas is? Because, again, I think OSU and Texas on paper, you're rolling the dice on who's higher. So I'd be curious to see how that all worked, like who, and I think they usually release it here a little later, but or maybe they already did and I missed it. I haven't seen anything
I think Andrew, they do that for I know they do that for the AP poll. I've seen where people will compile the votes of everybody and put it in a nice, neat chart, and usually you always get 1 or 2 weird ones out there, like, oh, I think actually, Notre Dame's 15, and everyone else thinks they're 5 to 10 somewhere in there, and you're like, oh. Okay, well, that happened.
Well, you mentioned it. I mean, look at Texas. They got their one random first place vote.
They did.
So, I mean, they don't get that first place vote. Think about it, they're actually lower than 18 because obviously that boosted their point value.
Yeah, they're probably lower than Wake Forest.
Yeah, they're probably lower than Wake Forest and Wisconsin, honestly, because I'm sure, let's see, what was that, 14? So, yeah, maybe, I don't know how many points you
They would have been pretty close.
Yeah, so it would have been close because, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It makes you wonder which coach. Obviously, that would never come out. I don't think they ever released the coaches' votes.
Yeah, no, that would cause so much drama.
But, like, I really would want to know which coach voted Texas number 1.
Yes, I do too.
And I always find it funny, too, and you see it in, like, some of the other preseason polls with conferences and such, is it's always funny to me when you have a team like Georgia receive more first-place votes than Ohio State, but Ohio State did better across the board, so they're still higher.
Yeah. That always usually means you get a lot of people to put Georgia 4 to try to balance that out. But that's surprisingly enough college football for today. I wouldn't think so in August, but NBA free agency offseason returns as the governor of the Brooklyn Nets, Joe Tsai, has voiced his support for the front office and coaches in wake of Kevin Durant's trade demands. For those of you who do not know what this story is, Kevin Durant essentially gave the Nets an ultimatum. You can either stay with me and get rid of Coach Steve Nash and general manager as well for the team, or you can trade me and keep those guys. And Joe Tsai, the governor of the Nets, has made the decision. As you can see here, our front office and coaching staff have my support. We will make decisions in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets. So we learn nothing. Everything stays the same, essentially. Kevin Durant probably still going to get traded. There's a fun rumor, I don't know if you saw it, Andrew, where allegedly Ben Simmons was in a group chat with all the Nets players before the Boston game. They asked if he was going to play, and he left the group chat. That got confirmed by Shams as not true. As much fun of a story that would have been is not true, unfortunately. But I want to get your take on this, Andrew. With the Brooklyn Nets, nothing really happening. Does this change the value on Kevin Durant? Is this more of a, okay, we know he still wants out. Does this change the leverage you have for him in this situation or anything?
Yeah, I saw this, and I took a couple different things away from it. And first off, I'm disappointed in Kevin Durant. I know, obviously, he did something similar. He leaves the Thunder, he frustrates everybody, and then he leaves the Warriors. And it seems to be a common theme all of a sudden. And a guy of that talent, it's a shame. And I think what he fails to realize – sorry, I know I'm going off your question real quick, but before I get into your question.
That's perfectly fine.
What I think he fails to realize, one, is every time he speaks, he's hurting his trade value. So to answer that part of the question, yes, this hurts his trade value. 2, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're the GM, you're the coach, you're the owner. You have Kevin Durant on your team, right?
Yeah.
Who are you checking with before a lot of these moves?
Kevin Durant.
You think Kevin Durant did an okay to trade for James Harden to bring in Kyrie Irving? You think he did an okay to trade away James Harden when he was unhappy? If they trade away Kyrie Irving before him, like, he's going to okay that. Like, they're not doing that move, and maybe now they will because the way he's treating them. But before that, you're doing everything you can to keep your superstar happy. Okay, like, who do you want? Who do you want? Who do you want? Like, we're going to make you happy. And for him to say that, one, I mean, first off, I mean, I know we joke around, we rip on people, but, I mean, for a player, like, to go out there and wish your coaches and your GMs fired like that, like, oh, you need to fire those guys or else I want out. Like, I don't know. To me, that's a little bit harsh, again, because I think, one, it's not Steve Nash's problem.
Yeah.
Like, you think Steve Nash is really bringing down that team when it's all said and done?
Yeah.
No, Kyrie Irving missed more than half the games last year. Yeah, James Harden holding out a little bit, not in shape, all that until he got traded. I mean, it's not Steve Nash.
Yeah.
Steve Nash's
And I know
control.
this is not to interrupt you too much, but I know this was something we talked about during the season with Brooklyn. How are you supposed to win games, when sometimes it was Andre Drummond or Seth Curry was the second best player out on the court?
Exactly.
You can't win in any NBA game with that situation going on.
No, you're 100% correct. And that's where I kind of took issue with it. And from the owner standpoint, let me just say this. I get what he said yesterday, and you're a big sports fan too. Mm-hmm. His words, I'm not trying to sound rude. I'll get into what I'm saying, but his words really don't mean anything. Like, he put out a tweet. But how many times do you see someone say that, and then a week later they get rid of the coach and GM, and they go, okay, Kevin Durant's an all-time player. We're going to keep Kevin Durant. So, like, I would not be surprised in a few weeks or so, maybe they do move on from them or something, or at least one of them maybe, to try to keep Kevin Durant happy. Because in the end, you want to keep Kevin Durant happy. But I will say this, too. He definitely has hurt his trade value, to answer your question. And every time he speaks, you demand a trade, that's on you. You're hurting your trade value. This has 100% of his trade. I mean, your team, you're a Dallas Mavericks fan. So, you're Mark Cuban, you're calling them up. Listen, you got a guy here, once your coach and GM gone, you guys are desperate now at this point. Because I think this is leaning towards Kevin Durant holding out. I really do. At this point, he's clearly not happy. He's putting it out there. You either get rid of the coach and GM or basically I'm out. So he's going to go to that level, I think, and not play. He clearly does not want to play under Steve Nash. For whatever reason, went down there. And that's basically what he's telling you. So if you're Mark Cuban or any other GM, or owner or whatever, you're sitting there like, listen, this guy's not going to play. He's going to hold out. You've lost all trade. Don't get me wrong, he's still going to bring in a huge package. But I think it does save you a pick or two, or maybe a ready-now role player or something like that. Because, again, you're either going to sit here and pay this guy. I think he's making like $36 million. You're either going to sit here and pay him $36 million / fine him, obviously, once that all goes through. Sit on your bench, cause more chaos and everything, and devalue your team. Because, again, he's wasting a roster spot, so your team is going to drastically go down and suffer, rather than bringing in a decent package or whatever and getting better that way. So, no, this absolutely hurts his value. And, I don't know. Hopefully it gets situated. I think obviously anyone would agree. As much as we laugh and always talk about Durant wanting out of places, taking the easy road, the NBA suffers from him not playing, obviously. So, in the end, I can make jokes about Kevin Durant or whatever, about him leaving and everything, but in the end, I'm an NBA viewer. I want to watch Kevin Durant play basketball.
It's not like that one game where, it was like the Clippers versus somebody, where the Clippers rested every big player, and it was like, Saturday night primetime featuring the Reggie Jackson Clippers. I remember they kept having to update the banner for it and take star players off because they wouldn't be playing. It was like, see, Pat Beverly do a thing on defense. It was like, oh, goodness. But that kind of ties into your point about being a fan of the NBA in general. We want to see superstars play, but I don't like this trend in the NBA where it almost feels like the players have too much power, something I never really thought I would say about any sports league. But when you have Kevin Durant and Wade kind of trying to hold the Nets hostage, trying to make it a mere, my way or the highway situation where you either keep me on because I'm one of the best players in the league and you fire, your coach, your GM, I really don't know how many teams are going to go with that. We're seeing it right here. The Nets are not going with it, and Kevin Durant's one of the best players in the NBA. I don't really know if there's anyone who can get away with that anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm also going to take you a step further, and you can disagree, and let me know if you do, but I think it's across sports at this point, and it's a shame. I think they've gotten way too much power. Obviously, this is the fresh topic, but you look around the leagues. Look at Juan Soto. He declined $440 million, basically said, I want it out. He's traded in the next few weeks, gets a new home. You look at, I think eventually Ohtani's going to be that way. Obviously, the Angels continue to struggle, so he's got he's got the rest of this year and then another year. You can think he's not going to want out next deadline if they're still this bad. You look at Tom Brady, and obviously a generational player, so it's a little more understandable. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was part of the reason why Bruce Arians, quote-unquote, retired. I think they kind of...
That wouldn't surprise me.
I think they kind of got into a thing, and I think that led to Arians... it was in the middle of the offseason randomly, so something happened, and I think that was partially there. I mean, you look at, I mean, I can keep going. You look at other teams. I mean, you had Le'Veon Bell hold out with his control. He gets moved. Obviously, it didn't work out for him. His career went. I mean, you look at the Antonio Brown situation, even the Carson Wentz situation in Philadelphia. He got his way, got out to Indianapolis with a former offensive coordinator, and that all went down. So, I mean, it's across sports, no matter whether you're Kevin Durant, Tom Brady level, or whether, and I'm saying this as a Carson Wentz fan, but listen, he hasn't proven anything to be like, oh, listen, I need to go to this place, and he was able to say, I want to go to this place, and he got his wish.
I mean, to be fair, what's Carson Wentz going to I'll throw one less interception.
well, my point is, like, unfortunately, it's gotten to that level. And
I know.
I mean, I guess I can't say it's not good for the game because I would say that, but there's no drastic viewership droppage, you know what I mean? Like, football's still going to be fine. Basketball's still going to have every fan out there next year. I mean, so it's going to be interesting, and I don't know the way around it. Like, I don't know what the solution is at this point because I think they've already gained that much control, and it's going to be like that forever. But I mean, you look at the best pitcher in baseball, one of them, Max Scherzer. He's been on like 3 different teams in the last 2 years. He's been with the Dodgers, the Nationals. Now he's with the Mets. I mean, so he's been all over, and it's been a problem around the league, and it's only continued to improve. Because here's the other problem: is you're Kevin Durant, or not sorry, you're Tom Brady, you're Aaron Rodgers, you're whoever superstar in another league. You're sitting here like, well, NBA guys got that much control. Why can't we get that much control?
Yeah.
NBA's not suffering viewership money. They're still getting their superstars and said players are still getting their money. Let's get that same control. I mean, CBA agreements are up all the time. You saw MLB struggle with it last offseason. They agreed to like a 1-year deal, so they're going to have to revisit it. So it's going to be a problem, and I don't know the solution. I'm happy I'm not the one sitting down trying to figure it out because I don't have it. I don't know if you got the solution, but I don't have one.
I do not have a solution either. I'm just simply throwing my observation out there that it really is a weird time in sports. And, I mean, I know that has probably been said literally every decade, but I think this one, it just doesn't make any sense at times. I don't think players should have the power to do this, especially when you have 4 years left on your contract. No. But at the same time, if he doesn't want to be there, he doesn't want to be there.
No, exactly. And this will lead into our next 2 topics, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a good segue there, as we'll get into those here in a little bit. But here's the problem, too, is you look at it, and I'm not disagreeing with it because I think there is some value to what I'm about to get to just because – you obviously, coaches take better jobs and everything when they have the opportunity, but you look at how it's affected even the college game at this point with the transfer portal. I mean, look at how many top-notch players were in the transfer portal this year. I mean, Lincoln Riley takes a job at USC. He takes his quarterback with him. Spencer Rattler transfers over to South Carolina, a big-time, I mean, not big-time, but like an SEC school, a power conference. So, to me, because here's the thing with them, too. They're like, oh, our favorite players are leaving when they want to. Like, why should I be any different? Like, I want to be like Kevin Durant. Or I want to be like LeBron James. Like, I want to have the opportunity, and if it's there, I want to have a chance to leave as well. So I think you're seeing it not only affect the NBA, but I think you're starting to see it the effect down in college-level sports. And, I mean, the transfer portal's been, active for a year, a full season now maybe? Yeah. And, I mean, just look how much it's changed college sports now. I mean, and I think you're seeing it now. And that's what's crazy to me is how is it going to continue to affect everything else? Because I think you are seeing those here down the road.
I think so, too. And that does take us right into our next subject. It is a trade requesting kind of weekend. Roquan Smith, linebacker for the Bears, he has officially requested a trade. Let me see if I can find the quote here. The linebacker wrote that the new front office regime does not value me here. But the Bears obviously switching their defense up a little bit. I guess Smith was a bit worried about his spot maybe or not. I don't know. When you got a great linebacker who's, top 4 in the NFL in tackles the last few years, it's a bit of an interesting sign if you're the Bears. And, I mean, not to pick on the Bears too much here, but you're already in a rebuild inside of a rebuild, it feels like. Getting a new coach now, trying to get things figured out. Justin Fields trying to be the guy and develop into the quarterback the Bears want him to be. And now you've got some of your best defensive players trying to get out of there.
Yeah, no, very interesting situation out there. I think you put it good, rebuilding and rebuilding. I mean, you look at their team. You failed to succeed with Mitch Trubisky. He was supposed to be the next big thing. You traded a lot to move up for him. That didn't work out. Then you go to Justin Fields. Do you believe he's the guy? I mean, I know it's only been a half a season or whatever, but I mean, we'll see what he does this year, but I don't have full confidence to sit here and say he's the next franchise quarterback of Chicago. you look at that. Yeah, I forget which team they lost him to, but you lose Allen Robinson, your best offensive weapon there in the offseason. So who's Justin Fields going to throw the ball to this year? And I think that's kind of where Smith's possibly coming from. And, again, this is kind of where the game is now. I'm not happy here. I don't care if I'm under contract. I'm going to request out, and you're going to find a trade partner for me, and you're going to get stuff. And you see this in football. And you know what? If you don't find something, I'm going to hold out, find a spot here next year, and whatever. You saw Le'Veon Bell's situation, whether it works out for him or not. So it's an interesting dynamic there. But listen, Smith's a good player, like you mentioned. So they're going to get a solid package, and whoever team's able to trade for him, it'll be an interesting thing. But that's the thing with the Bears. I mean, they still have. No, he left. They still.
That's
have Mac.
about every boyfriend.
Well, they still have Mac.
I don't even know.
Mac?
I don't even know if they do at this point. The Bears are in such a weird situation where I really have no idea what's going on. And that's not to be, mean to them. I just genuinely have no idea. Someone who prioritizes college over NFL, mainly because of where I'm at, I really don't know what has been going on with the Bears. All I know is I don't really see any improvements with them. When we get into the NFL season, I'll obviously do more research on it, but I just don't know what's going on there. That feels like a division that should be winnable. I mean, you look at Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay. You know where Green Bay is. You know where Minnesota is. You know where Detroit is. If you're Chicago, there's no reason you can't be second place in that division every year. There's no reason you can't finish second in the NFC North and compete. You have all the, you have the history. You have the tradition. You think you have your quarterback again in Justin Fields. You just got to have a defense, which you already have. Now you just need to finish up the offense, and you, in theory, should be good to go. But like you said earlier, you were asking me, I don't know if Justin Fields is the guy. I honestly don't. I feel like in the NFL it's a bit different, where I feel like you kind of have to give quarterbacks at least 2 years to get adjusted, because you never know. You might have 1 year where they look terrible, and then they figure it out, or maybe the opposite happens. So I think this is the make or break year for Fields. I really do.
Yeah, so real quick, Khalil Mack, I forgot, is going to the Chargers this
There we go.
offseason. So he was with the Bears last year, but he moved this offseason. So obviously that could have been a pretty cool linebacker. I guess they had it last year, but a good linebacker duo for a little bit. But no, I agree. I think it also depends on the quarterback situation, on how many years you give him. Like a guy like Fields, I don't even know if 2 years is fair just because of what he has to deal with.
That is true.
You turn to I'm just going to bring the Eagles up because I'm most familiar with them, but you draft Devontae Smith, you bring in A.J. Brown. I think that in that case, yeah, this is the make or break year for Hurts because he's got a lot of weapons. If he can't succeed in year 2 and make that improvement, then yeah, you got to start searching elsewhere. But I mean, you look at. I'm just saying, look at the difference between what Jalen Hurts is doing going into year 2 as a starter versus Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Like to me, that's just not fair to compare those two situations.
It is. Yeah, it is completely different.
Here's the problem. That's why you see so many quarterbacks sometimes drop off. I mean, look at the Browns. How many quarterbacks they drafted and the unfair situations. I mean, I know toward the end of his Browns career is a little better for Baker, but you look at the beginning or some of the guys they've had over those past years. Imagine if their situation if they do get drafted by a different team, like. They might have been a whole different player.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where it's kind of crazy to always think about. And I always, even myself, I mean, when you think about, if I would have done this, like, I transferred schools in high school, for example. So it's always like, if I never transferred, how would my life be different or something like that? Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same thing with them. Like, imagine if a team drafted Tom Brady before the 6th round or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's say, the Chargers drafted Tom Brady. Does he still turn out the best quarterback ever? Like, so it does all, play a factor in where your situation's at. So that's what's going to be a tough read for Fields is if it doesn't work out for Chicago this year, is another team really going to give him a chance because of the situations he's in? And sometimes it takes, you take a backup role and you have the Nick Foles situation, and he does earn another opportunity because of how he does as a backup. So it's always an interesting dynamic, and I'm interested to see how this Bears situation not only works out for Roquan Smith, but also a guy like Justin Fields.
And we have one more trade request to get to today. It is Kareem Hunt, who the running back for the Browns, as if the Browns offseason could not get any more crazy. Right here, you get Kareem Hunt saying he is wanting out of Cleveland. He was seeking a contract extension. This is the final year of a 2-year, $12 million deal for Hunt. He had missed team drills the past 2 practices, returned on Sunday, and this is going to be another interesting scenario for Cleveland because you already have the limbo of Deshaun Watson. Will he get suspended 6 games? Is it going to be the whole season? Is it 10, 12? Who knows? We still have the NFL that has to get their decision out on that. When that does happen, hopefully they'll be nice enough and do it on Tuesday or Thursday so we can cover it immediately. But that's just me. But Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Browns, declined to comment about it. So we have another rotating piece potentially now for Cleveland. So looking at the offseason, I guess, for the Browns, so Kareem Hunt's not going to be here. I would assume he's not. If he wants to trade, I would think unless something drastically happens, he's going to be gone. And if Deshaun Watson gets fully suspended this year, you're down to 3 guys mainly, of him, Chubb, and Cooper. That's your big offensive weapons for the Browns.
Yeah, I feel bad for Cooper. You know, he goes from a solid Dallas team to this team, and he's got to deal with all this stuff. Kareem Hunt, I don't think has much leverage, and I'll get into that here in a second, but, like, I don't know if you saw Chubb's comments on it.
I did not know.
He basically, paraphrasing, just said, find a way to keep my good friend or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you do lose Hunt, you're in jeopardy of possibly losing Chubb as well. And you're going to tell me if they lose Chubb, Amari Cooper's going to want to stay there? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So this could be a huge domino effect to look out for here. But correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, Kareem Hunt doesn't have much leverage. 1, you had all your off-the-field issues cost you out of Kansas City. 2, you're on a 1-year contract. Just go out and play. Dude, you're on a contract year. You're 27. Running backs don't – I know 27 is young, but they're guys that don't really make it past 30. I mean, that's when they kind of drop off. You better go out there and play, get a contract year, and go help yourself. You're in jeopardy here, especially – think about it. And obviously, your goal is to win a Super Bowl. And I get it. He wants to go win a Super Bowl. But in the end, you're also on a contract year, and unless you get traded to the perfect team, think about it. Think about the opportunity going into a contract year with the possibility of losing your quarterback for an entire season. Think about how much – ground you're going to have to cover between him and Chubb. Think about how much better you can make yourself look and turn this contract year into a big successful season, or even do this maybe throughout the season. Like, don't hold out yet, but, like, listen, I think we all agree, especially with Watson suspended, this Browns team's going to be pretty bad. So you're going to have leverage right at the trade deadline. That's when you make your move if you're going to make this move. Right now, I mean, teams already built their offseason. Yeah. I mean, if you're a true contender, I mean, for the most part, obviously Hunt's a good back, so you'll have leverage to get better. But, like, if you're a true contender, you already built your running backfield. I mean, you're pretty much set until maybe you see someone go down, maybe someone doesn't work out the way you wanted it. The trade deadline's when you make your move. Right now, I really don't think Hunt's got much leverage, and I know you already mentioned him missing drills and stuff. So I mean, he's gonna obviously hold out, but he's a guy I don't think is going to get moved. And I've usually said once they want out, they'll get moved pretty quick. But he's a guy I'm going to go against what I usually say there and say I don't think he's going to have much leverage to the trade deadline. I think it's going to be a situation almost like Le'Veon Bell, just because, I mean, Bell had more leverage, and you saw him not get moved. But, I mean, first off, yeah, you've already had off-the-field drama, and we don't need to get into that. But now you're going to pull this card, and right before the season, I mean, if I'm a team, that's a red flag until I see what my team's got. I don't want to – if I'm a Rams team, if I'm a Chiefs team, if I'm whatever top team you want to mention, I don't want that getting in my clubhouse right now. I mean, we're already a few weeks into training camp. We already saw one preseason game last Thursday. I think everyone else kicks off this Thursday/Friday, depending on when the first game is. And, I mean – unless someone gets hurt, which obviously I'm not wishing upon, gets hurt in preseason, I don't think Hunt has much leverage until the deadline.
Well, see, to me, the thing, Andrew, I know you brought it up, final year of a contract deal, just go out and play. That's essentially what the Browns told him. Okay, cool, congratulations. Go play. Go earn your money. Yeah. We just won't re-sign you then if that's how you feel. But I think this is kind of similar to the Baker situation in that if he does get traded, if they do decide to trade Hunt, it's not going to be for anything.
No.
And the other thing, Kareem Hunt's 27. To put that in perspective, that is 50 in running back years.
Exactly.
27 and is an extremely old running back in the NFL. Usually your career starts going downhill at about 25. So for an older running back who, yes, is a veteran, has more experience, he's not going to be the same as some guy you could just go draft out of college or maybe find some other way through the undrafted free agents. There are so many other options for teams. I just don't know if you would want to go with that Kareem Hunt situation with, like you said, Andrew, he already has the bad PR in his way in terms of things we're not going to get into that whole situation. You can go look that up on your own if you want to. This is not the time to mention that. But there's just so much going on with Cleveland. And as someone who's been following the team for the past few years, I don't know how the Browns keep doing this. You would think they would figure this out at some point. And it looked like everything was going right. But the second they made that Deshaun Watson trade, every good thing the Browns had done in the last 4 to 5 years, from all the way from 0-16 up till that moment, meant nothing. Is completely thrown out the window, and they are pretty much back to square one. They may not even be at square one. They might step one. They might be at step 0, being completely honest here. I just don't know what you do if you're the Cleveland Browns, besides just tell Kareem Hunt, hey, you're playing this year. We just won't re-sign you.
No, absolutely. And here's the other thing. You're not even a starting running back putting up these numbers. You're splitting carries. So, like, if you're a team, you're going to go to a team that you're splitting carries with anyway because you don't want to take the chance of giving him double the workload, getting hurt or something like that. He's already missed time in the past. So, I mean, again, he's another guy you have to be cautious with. He almost reminds me of, sorry to bring up the Eagles again, but
that's perfectly fine.
In that Super Bowl year, at the trade deadline, we traded for Jay Ajayi, a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-round pick, something like that. It almost reminds me of that situation. You know, you're going to play through half the year if he does play, and then you move him at the deadline, and you get like a 3rd or 4th-round pick for him, maybe a compensation pick if he plays so many snaps, or if you win the title, you know, you can add value to it that way. But that's kind of the situation it reminds me out here is he doesn't have much leverage. It's going to turn into a trade deadline piece, and you just get what you can get for him.
That is probably the best thing to do for everyone involved in this. Moving on to our final subject of the day before we get out of here, the MLB standings. And, oh boy, they have changed in a few places just over the past week or so. Starting with the American League, as we always do, looking at the East, the Yankees' lead is slowly starting to shrink. That's what happens when you go 4-6 in your last 10 games. Yankees still with a 71-39 record, but only 10.5 games above the Blue Jays, which still, that's 10.5 games. That's still quite a bit, just to show how good the Yankees have been, just to say, only 10.5. But looking at the rest of the East, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, and Boston filling the rest of the AL East out. Looking at the Central, we have, of course, the Tigers and Royals, who at this point are just tanking. They're doing whatever they do. But the Twins, Guardians, and White Sox all within 2 games of each other. Minnesota barely holding on to that lead now. It is getting rather tight.
Give me all the drama down in division races. I love it, especially if you have 3 teams fighting for one. This is gonna be great. Sorry to cut you off there.
Hey, that's good.
August is like the worst month in terms of sports, and here's why. Like, I get the excitement, college football and the NFL, but all that is excitement. Like,
yeah,
wait for September when you actually have them kicking off, when you have the playoff races for them. It'll be like, all August is anticipation for a great September.
Yeah.
Like, can we just fast forward through August and then start here in September?
Well, to me, it's almost like if we could combine the last half of July and the first half of August into a month, that is officially the worst. Because at least we have college football kicking off August 27th this year.
Yeah.
This year, it's slightly different, even though there'll be like 2 games that most people will watch, unless you're someone like me who, yes, I would love to watch Duquesne and Florida State. Yes, I have nothing else to do on my Saturday, but it's this hope, I guess I should say. Yeah. You start building up, you anticipate, you start getting hopeful about it. Oh, well, my team could do this. They have this guy. Training camp's going well. This is happening. And then the games start, and usually any expectation you have are thrown out the window by that first Saturday. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, the real season begins now. I guess we'll see what happens. And with baseball, I'm sure it's the same way. I wouldn't say it's the real season because I know we've mentioned on the show every game is important, but like the 1.5, I guess I should say. Not the postseason yet, but like, okay, these games seem like they mean more now at least.
No, you're feeling the drama build up. No, I'm excited here to get into the final weeks of August and into September, though.
And then looking at the AL West, the Houston Astros with a 70-40 record, still on top with an 11.5 game lead on the Mariners. And then the Rangers, Angels, and A's still just trying to be above 45%. Not even 500 anymore, just above 45. Looking at the NL East, the Mets have a now 7-game lead over the Braves. Mets are starting to exert their will a little bit. 8 of the last 10. Braves only winning 5 of the last 10, going a perfect 5-5. But the Phillies, 9 of their last 10, 5 in a row, trying to catch up. Only 3 games behind the Braves now. And then the Marlins and Nationals finishing it out. Just that's a boggling number for the Nationals. 35 and a half games behind first. That's just weird to see.
Yeah, real quick on them because I don't want to waste too much time talking about them. But the Phillies play the Nationals this weekend, and then I watched a little bit of the Cubs-Nationals game yesterday. That team might not win 10 games the rest of the season.
Yeah.
That team, now that they traded Soto and Bell, is absolutely terrible. And I feel so bad for Luke Voit. Like, to go from that Padres team and then not even to be in the initial trade because Hosmer declined it because of his trade option, and then now he got stuck with Washington. I feel so bad for that man. Like, he is stuck there, and I think since the trade, he's got like 3 or 4 home runs already. But that team, they're bad. Like, the Phillies hit 14 home runs off them in 3 games.
My goodness. Yeah, the Nationals are an interesting team this year. I don't even know what to say about them. But looking at the NL Central, the Cardinals have taken the lead over the Brewers, a 2-game lead. St. Louis on a 7-game win streak, and the Brewers are starting to fall apart a little bit. That's what happens when you trade your closer, though. That's absolutely going to happen.
0 cents.
Yeah, but then the Cubs and Reds tied for 3rd, and the Pirates just a half game behind. So those 3 pretty even if you're a Cubs, Reds, or Pirates fan. Looking at the NL West, the Dodgers with a commanding 16-game lead over the Padres now. The Dodgers have won 8 in a row, 9 of their last 10. The Padres have lost 5 in a row. I know they just had a big series with the Dodgers. Dodgers won that series. And then the Giants, only 5.5 games from the Padres. If things keep going well, I know both teams kind of treading 500 in their last 10. The door's slowly opening if San Francisco wants to make a move here. The question is, can they?
So a couple things real quick. I know, again, bad team, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But we always joke around about point differential and run differential and how much they really don't matter that much. How about this? The Cubs, I'm going to say they have the same record. I know it's a half game. The Cubs minus 77. The Pirates minus 150, and they have the same exact record. Yeah. Is that not unbelievable?
That's crazy.
That's just insane to me. But no, to answer your question, yeah, I really do believe the Giants can catch the Padres. They went through a bad stretch. You saw it, obviously, where they were right with the Dodgers, and all of a sudden they're 20 games back in the blink of an eye. But I think they started to figure things out. They have a huge series with the Padres right now. They took Game 1 last night, so if they're able to take 1 or 2 more there, you can actually gain some ground. You win the next 2 and somehow pull off a sweep. You're looking at 2.5 back for the Padres here with just over a month and a half left. Even if you just win the series, you gain a game on them. And no, I think it is realistic. They won 100 games for a reason last year. They got off to a hot start for a reason. It's baseball. You go into a little bit of slumps, and luckily for the Giants, they found the slump in the middle of the year, and there's still plenty of time to turn it around. Obviously, you're not making up 21.5 games, but you can make up 4.5 games there and catch the Padres, especially with the slump they've been in, or even chase down the way the Braves been playing. Maybe they fall off a little bit. No, the wild card is going to be a fun race too, and see how that goes. But huge weekend I want to give that, even though I hate the Mets and hate saying it, but big shout out to the Mets going out and showing out. They won 4 out of 5. They won four games in a 5-game series with the Braves. That's why you saw that big lead open up there in the division. That was a big series for the Braves going in 3 games back. If they were able to win 3 out of 5 or even 2, that way you don't lose much ground. But instead, they dropped 4 and Mets gained some breathing room.
And then I know we were joking about run differential. How about the Rangers? 48 and 60, but a -1 run differential. I mean, you just can't make that up.
Right?
The most perfectly balanced team in terms of run differential out of everybody. No one else is close to that except, maybe the Orioles with a +7, but almost dead even in their 48 and 60.
No. Here's the question. What's more impressive? Minus 199 or plus 225? Or 226. Sorry, I can't read.
I really don't know. We need to put them together and see how bad the Dodgers could beat the Nationals. Can they beat them 20-0?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay, what about 30-0?
Let's just say they're back-to-back game. Phillies are obviously worse than the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. Back-to-back games, the Phillies scored 6 runs in the first inning.
God.
They were up 9-0 in the first one, and then 11-0 in the second one, and went on to win 13-1. So yes, if the Phillies can do that, the Dodgers can definitely. Do
Okay. Bigger question: can Ole Miss beat the Nationals? This is
no. I will always say I am a true believer that won't happen.
Okay. Well, I just had to throw the question out there because that is an age-old debate. We're moving the can Alabama beat the Browns debate to baseball. But looking at wild card standings before we get out of here, the Blue Jays in the AL with a +2, the Rays with that +0.5, and Seattle holding on to that third spot. Baltimore just a game behind them, and then the Guardians and the White Sox hanging around, and the Red Sox just continuing to fall further down that list.
Yes, I saw something funny on the Orioles situation. I mentioned how it's disappointing they traded Mancini and everything. Someone made a joke because of the amount of games the Astros and Mariners have left, and the Astros already swept them once and won like 3 out of 4 or something like that. Someone made the joke, "Oh, Orioles knew what they were doing. They were trading Mancini to the Astros so they could help their playoff chances, so the Mariners could get beat up by the Astros." Because now all of a sudden, you see Baltimore creeping in. But no, I love those kind of stories in all of sports, but I mean especially baseball. But I would love to see somehow you have Baltimore. My dream scenario here where you'd have Seattle and Baltimore take that wild card spot and knock out the Rays or the Jays. Rays, because Rays have been in the playoffs a lot lately, and it'd be cool to see a Blue Jays, Orioles, and Mariners, or even the Guardians. I mean, no one even expected them to be close to the playoffs this year, and they're finding themselves here in the race. So it's gonna be a fun time. I think it really will be.
Well, I mean, Mom's saying go Alabama. I mean, they might beat the Browns if Jacoby Brissett's their starting quarterback. Against that defense, Will Anderson might cause some problems. But looking at the NL wild card, the Braves are 4 games in that first spot. The Phillies are just 3 games behind the Braves. They have that second spot. They have passed the Padres. Do we have a new curse going on? I mean, hey, ever since Juan Soto came over, the Padres, they moved a spot down. That's all I'm saying. The facts don't lie, Andrew.
No. I mean, listen, it's baseball. I think baseball is the least. You can get every superstar you want, and it will matter the least just because of how weird of a game it could be. And I mean, I'm not saying they're going to lose a lot of games. They can obviously turn around, but they obviously get Fernando Tatis back. But I mean, listen, you're seeing it for a reason. They dropped 5 games. They're 1-5 with Juan Soto. That's just incredible. And I mean, you even saw with I'm gonna pull Bryce Harper here, I mean obviously I love Bryce Harper, but how funny or whichever word you want to use, he left the team and they go on to win the World Series the following year. That's just odd or fun. That's just where you can have every superstar you want. And let me think about it. Dodgers only won the COVID year, and they've had every superstar. It feels like for the last few years. They're obviously a good regular season team. But no, I'm excited here. I think Brewers are going to continue to slip. So I think Giants definitely pass the Brewers, if I'm being honest. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the Giants find a way to creep back into the playoff race even more than the 5.5 games. But I think it's going to be a fun battle there at the top 3, too. If you don't have any movement there, I think you can have some Phillies, Braves, Padres movement.
I think so, too. The Brewers are just such an interesting scenario now ever since the deadline of they truly are the most unpredictable team. They're doing what the Cardinals usually do, where they just decide to randomly drop games because of their own actions to the Reds and Pirates. But hey, as a Cardinals fan, if they want to do it this year, I will give them the red carpet. They can walk out and lose to the Reds as many times as they want to. That is perfectly fine with me. But Andrew, as we kind of scroll over this one last time, any final thoughts about where baseball is at this point in the season?
Yeah, I'll talk about our 2 favorite teams real quick. I feel like the Phillies and Cardinals just basically replicate themselves. If the Cardinals lose, I feel like the Phillies lose.
Yeah, we're
if
the same team. We're just actually secretly the same team.
I mean, I know the Phillies ended up edging them out, but it was 4-3. It wasn't like the Phillies won the season series 6-1 or something like that. But it seems like when the Cardinals go in a slump, so do the Phillies. When the Cardinals get hot this year, But I already mentioned I hope Baltimore can continue to make noise, or Cleveland, something like that. 2 teams you didn't expect there. Even Seattle, longest playoff drought in, I think, all of sports, but definitely baseball. That can come to an end. Phillies trying to end their 11-year playoff drought. So it could be fun. You could see a couple playoff droughts ended here. And, it'll be fun, especially as we get into late September.
It absolutely will be. As always, everybody, we thank you for tuning in. Always a fun time getting to do this show. For Andrew Santangelo, I am Cade Kennedy. If you enjoyed what you heard this evening, feel free to give us a follow here on Twitch at NWTV7 or subscribe to our YouTube channels, whether it be the NWTV7 channel or the Guys Who Stare at Stats. We do have our college football preview up if you want to see our 4-hour mega show covering all things college football. We do have that available on the channel as well. And as always, be sure to like the video as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you see NWTV7 or the Guys Who Stare at Stats. Be sure to subscribe and give us a follow, whatever terms you want to use. Until the next time, whether that be Friday, whether that be Saturday, we might have a special guest coming on if we do a show Saturday. Just going to give you a little tease there. Not going to say who it is, though. We got to keep it a surprise. But until next time, have a great one, everybody.